And a happy Thursday to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. We are kicking off a very quiet stretch of weather as we go into the weekend and into the beginning of next week. But there are a couple things that I want to circle back to, specifically with our cold spell that we had on Monday, Tuesday, and a little bit yesterday morning. We'll go ahead and talk a little bit about what that's pertaining to. We have an update with our drought monitor that we did get as of this morning around the 9 a.m. hour. And then we'll go into what's in store as we head into Friday, Saturday, and round out the weekend on Sunday. But first things first, let's talk about those records once again. Many of you probably saw this graphic yesterday, but I just wanted to confirm with you that yes, we did hit a temperature of 25 degrees, and this was on Tuesday morning, on Veterans Day morning. So going back to our freeze warning graphic, the criteria for here in Central Georgia, it is issued when significant widespread freezing temperatures are expected, and we definitely had that. Numbers were 7 degrees below freezing temperature up here in the Macon area, but it was for areas still in the growing season. So you can see here at the bottom, these products are issued, frost and freeze warnings to be specific. They're issued until each county's first hard freeze, which is going to be 28 degrees or colder, or until that November 20th date. So up here in Macon, we definitely got below that 28 degree mark. And I know this is a bit of a boring graphic and it's a lot of reading, but I'm going to read through it with you. This was issued as of yesterday morning by the National Weather Service. We officially have the end of these frost and freeze products. So what this means is a hard freeze occurred in the vast majority of North and Central Georgia during the overnight and early morning hours of Tuesday, November 11th. Therefore, frost and freeze products have concluded for the fall season, so that will put an end to our growing season. As such, frost and freeze products are not anticipated in the coming days, and what they were talking about was specifically yesterday morning, where some values did dip below freezing temperature, even though at least portions of the area will experience some freezing conditions. So we will have our fair share of days in the near future that we are going to have some freezing temperatures, not necessarily over the next week, but as we transition into this cooler time of year and the official start of winter. But we aren't going to get anything in the way of frost or freeze products because our growing season has officially ended due to that widespread hard freeze that we saw on Tuesday morning. And let's also go over your rainfall totals, which is absolutely nothing for the month of November so far. We're getting into pretty close to the halfway point of the calendar month. And through November 12th, we are now creeping into the very dry category for the month of November. That's what happens. These plot points continue to steadily go down day by day, each day that you don't record some rainfall. So on average, typically around 2 3/4 of an inch of rain in the month of November since we started taking those records way back in the late 1800s. And a record for rainfall, that was back in 1992, 10.27 inches of rain was recorded in November. So here's the update with our drought monitor. Once again, we did not see really any big changes in Central Georgia. The only areas that we did see get some sort of change is down in Crisp, Dooley, and Wilcox County. We saw a portion of this severe drought extend into our south and southwesternmost counties. Everyone else is still under the same conditions, and we have even seen some areas maybe get some relief, specifically back over here on the Georgia and Alabama state line. But we also see the area of the severe drought stretching into Johnson, Emmanuel, Trutland, Wheeler, and portions of Montgomery and Toombs counties. And we also continue to see that patch of an extreme drought up here that goes into Pike County and is right on the cusp of areas like Lamar County and Upson County. But the vast majority of you are still under moderate drought conditions, which still is something to take into account. Make sure that you're watering your plants and anything that you have in your backyard garden a little bit more frequently. But also, we haven't seen them worsen into more drastic impacts that you would see with a severe drought, extreme drought, or an exceptional drought. But there are patches of that extreme drought, like I mentioned, up to the northwest of us, and there's a big patch of it down in South Georgia, which is a highly agricultural portion of the state. So we'll continue to see if we can get some relief over the course of the next week, but right now it is really just a quiet stretch of weather as we head towards the weekend. It is going to welcome in some warmer weather, which is definitely a pleasant change of pace from the blistering cold weather that we welcomed in the work week with. But we will still have some chilly and some cool nights, but the days are going to be warm with some above average high temperatures. So here's a walk around the quad. Plenty of blue sky no matter where you look, not seeing anything in the way of cloud cover. Your temperatures right now, mid to upper 60s. So we are on our way to the 70s very quickly. Don't know why it's reading 55 degrees specifically in Cochrane, maybe having a bit of an issue with the sensor down there at the Bleckley County Airport. But 63 seems to be the lowest without that outlier that we do see. That's all the way up in Monticello. A good cluster of 67s farther down to the south and the southwest. And 68 degrees, the warmest number that we see in Vidalia, Dublin, and all the way up here in Macon. So that number, that's the warmest that we see in central Georgia. How does this shape up with numbers, say, down in the south and the southeast? Well, we have some 70s over into Mississippi, 72 down in New Orleans, 72 also in Panama City. 80 looks to be the warmest number over in Houston, so that looks like it takes the cake for the warmest temperature here in the eastern United States, where there is plenty of darker green and plenty of light blue in states farther up to the north and the northeast of us. Just getting into that general time of year where areas to the north of us are going to be cooler at this portion of the day, just since they are a little bit closer to the North Pole and they are tilted a little bit farther away from that direct sunlight. We are a little bit closer, as we do have that, remember, 23.5 degree tilt that we all learned in elementary school and middle school. So that's what results in the seasons. And as we head into the official start of winter, that is going to be when the North Pole is pointed farthest away from the sun, and then it will continue to get closer as we go into the summertime months. So dew point temperatures somewhere in the 40s, still not really anything in the way of significant moisture in our forecast, but there are some patchy areas of light green down to the southwest of us, over to the west of us. We're going to need to see an uptick in this moisture content, need to welcome in some of those areas of some light green if we are to get anything in the way of a significant rain chance. And the breeze has finally calmed down after what seems like 3 days in a row of some pretty gusty winds. We still see some patches of blue up in Putnam, Hancock, and Baldwin counties, even a 10-mile-per-hour sustained wind up here in Macon. That's all we're really looking at throughout the duration of today. And your feels like temperatures, this was a big talking point on Monday and Tuesday, as we didn't have numbers even creep out of the 40s, maybe some areas that topped out in the low 50s. Once you get above that 50-degree mark, your feels like temperatures are going to be pretty much the same, no matter what form of a breeze is present all across your area. So yesterday's almanac, 71 degrees for a high temperature. We went a little bit above what I was saying in the forecast. Not necessarily a bad thing. We returned to average very quickly. Your high temperature on Tuesday sat at 53 degrees, and we saw an increase of nearly 20 degrees over a 24-hour period. But we still held on to the chilly morning, 35 degrees for a morning low, and your average low sits around 43 degrees this time of year. So, of course, as we go into the remainder of the work week, we will be searching for some more average feeling low temperatures, and 43 degrees actually is more reminiscent of what the lows started out earlier on this Thursday morning. But we'll take a look at the records. 83, very thankfully we're not that warm like we were back in 1989 and 1913. We've mentioned that year quite some time when specifically referencing those records that we've set all time with the low temperatures and maybe your lowest high temperature. 27 degrees was the temperature about 112 years ago. Your year departure of rain has now crept below 1.5 inches above where we should be, but we're still hovering at 1.42 inches above where we should be in the calendar year as a whole. Sunrise yesterday, 7:02, and sunset at 5:35. Not seeing about a minute of fluctuation like we were, say, about a month ago in time, but we are seeing that sunrise get a little bit later each and every day, and the sunset, continues to get a little bit earlier each and every evening. So hour by hour, temperatures should top out somewhere around 74, 73 degrees as we head into the afternoon. Looks like actually temperatures beginning a slight cool down as we go through that heating period, that warmest portion. And then we go into the upper 60s and the low 60s already at 6 p.m. So we are starting to bring that chill back in the air pretty quickly each and every evening that maybe you're heading out of dinner, or of course maybe you have to go run some late night errands or such just to get ready for the day tomorrow. 73 degrees, that's my high temperature. We may overshoot it, but we should be in the neighborhood of that number, maybe 74 or 75. or maybe just slightly cooler at 71 or 72 degrees. Again, really hard to nail down the exact high temperature for all of central Georgia. I try to get more of a middle ground, so some areas may trend a little bit warmer, some areas may just be a tad bit cooler. But really the main headline with this is we're back to normal for this time of year. 73, a little bit above average, but your morning lows finally got back into the trend of being somewhere near that 40-degree mark, maybe pretty close to average for this time of year. Northwesterly winds, maybe occasionally blowing up to 15 miles per hour, but not going to really be much of a factor today. It's just going to make for a more pleasant environment. Satellite and radar picture, crystal clear, no clouds and no rain, and we are going to continue to see that image on the satellite and radar as long as the high pressure continues to stay put all across the south and the southeast. So here's a look at what Future View has over the next 3 days. We go into the evening hours, evening commute time later today. It is still looking like, once again, a very benign forecast, very quiet. Nothing really going on besides some passing cloud cover as we go into the nighttime hours. This could be courtesy of a weak frontal boundary, but we just don't have a lot to work with in terms of moisture. So that's really going to be our only indication of a couple frontal boundaries that will move through over the foreseeable future. We start out Friday morning, nice and clear. Once again, a beautiful sunrise to welcome you out the door. Beautiful clear blue skies all throughout your Friday afternoon into the evening hours. Then we get past sunset. We still remain clear all the way into Saturday morning. Saturday afternoon, maybe seeing a few passing clouds to the north and the northeast of us. But other than that, it is still not producing anything in the way of rain. Maybe another good cluster of some cloud cover up to the northwest as we roll into the overnight hours and early on Sunday morning. But if I'm sitting here picking apart how much cloud cover we're going to have on Future View, you know it is a very quiet stretch of weather. So obviously not a lot going on. So we'll try to talk about some of the specifics with your numbers and maybe some specific forecasts for some of the weekend events. I typically do that on Friday, but it's such a quiet stretch of weather, I'll go ahead and give you a little bit of an earlier preview for some of that. Let's talk about the winds. Those maybe on occasion could be a factor throughout today, but not really putting too much stock into that. I don't think the winds are really a factor whatsoever. Very calm conditions as we go about your Friday afternoon. It is Saturday evening that they do build back in, coming in from the southwest, so that may help propel some moisture back into our forecast. Again, if we have a southerly component with our winds, it does usher in some moisture from the Gulf, or if we have a southeasterly component, it will usher in some moisture from the Atlantic. And you can see that right now, maybe some gusts up to 15, 20 miles per hour. But the winds are gustier the farther northeast that you travel. That may be important, and it may be an important factor for that game going on in Athens on Saturday night against the Texas Longhorns. We'll talk more about that in a second. But over the next 3 days, expect pretty much a carbon copy forecast from Thursday into Friday. Same low temperature, same high temperature. Some areas may fluctuate a little, but I don't expect too much change with your forecast in between today and tomorrow. I do expect a little bit of a warm-up, however, as we head into Saturday, and I think that's mainly going to be attributed to that increase in moisture that we saw, those southwesterly winds pushing in a little bit more humidity into our forecast, and of course increasing our dew point temperatures. The higher those dew point temperatures get, the warmer your temperatures have to sit, because of course you can't have temperatures that are below your dew point temperatures. So 77 for a high temperature as we roll into Saturday, and once again some mostly sunny skies. But the first round of the playoffs are kicking off tomorrow for high school football. What's in store for your football Friday night forecast? Of course, we're not going out for tailgate anymore. We only do that for the regular season games, but we will still have our football Friday night wrap-up show at 11:45 tomorrow evening. 69 degrees right there at tailgate, and I guess I put the wrong icon there. I meant to grab the sunset icon, not the sunrise icon. But still a little bit of a cooler afternoon. I think it's going to be feeling mighty pleasant as you're heading out the door, maybe wrapping up work and getting ready to head out to those playoff games. 56 around first kickoff. So yes, the kickoff time going to be around 7:15, maybe even 7:30. Go ahead and break out the jacket because it will be past sunset. Sunset is going to be around the 5:30 time frame. So if we're waiting another hour and a half, I think it is going to be dark outside already. Your temperatures will begin to cool down, and they will continue to cool down as you go about the game. Temperatures somewhere in the 50s for all of our games in Central Georgia as we get into final score. And hopefully many of you are getting some good news about moving on to the second round of the playoffs. Georgia football forecast. I mentioned there's a big game up 441 this weekend, squaring off against number 10 Texas. How Texas crept back to that number 10 spot is beyond me, but hey, let's put an end to it and let's knock them back down even farther. The Bulldogs, it is going to be an amazing tailgate forecast, but it is a 7:30 kickoff, so it is a night game in Sanford Stadium, which I'm ecstatic to see on TV, but temperatures are going to be a bit chilly as you go about the game from the first quarter all the way down into final score. Hopefully, maybe one overtime at the very most, but let's put an end to the Longhorns a little bit earlier than that. Mostly clear atmosphere, a few passing clouds throughout the day, but as we go into the nighttime hours, I think conditions will clear out. Conditions are going to cool down, and the sunset going to be about 2 hours before kickoff. And kickoff, I know I just said it's going to be a 7:30 kickoff, but we know from experience with all of these ESPN broadcasts, if you can still view them. I know there's still the discrepancy with YouTube TV, but kickoff normally is about 15 minutes or 20 minutes past when they schedule it. So it is going to be an even later kickoff, may even be even later time that you are heading home. So expect maybe some temperatures about a degree or two cooler than what I do have at those specific times. But very thankfully, nothing in the way of rain to talk about. And these chilly mornings are actually going to get more and more pleasant as we go into the weekend. Still sitting right there around the 40-degree mark Thursday, Friday, and into Saturday, but then 49 for a morning low as you're walking out the door heading to church on Sunday morning, walking out the door heading to work on Monday. Once again, another high temperature of 49 degrees. So in between Saturday morning and into Sunday and Monday mornings is when we finally creep back above that average low of 43 degrees. And your afternoon high temperatures, they're getting more of an increase. 77 on Saturday, you already saw in that next 3 days graphic, but 77 once again on Sunday and 76 degrees as we head into Monday. What this tells me is there's nothing going on weather-wise that's really going to influence our forecast. We're not getting a front to usher in cooler air, and we're also only seeing a little bit of discrepancy or difference between your high temperatures as we head into the beginning of next week. And I think that's just mainly going to be dependent on cloud cover. It's still really going to feel virtually the same. And your humidity day by day, we have to keep an eye on this time of year because like I mentioned, if a front comes through, in order for us to receive some widespread rain, we do need moisture in the atmosphere. We need something for that front to pick up and lift and create those widespread rain chances. Well, at the peak, we only see dew point temperatures on Sunday, maybe somewhere into the 50s. It doesn't really look like we have, say, a humid atmosphere or a very muggy atmosphere, which we're very likely not to see any of this dark green until we get sometime in the spring. But right now, it looks like it will be a very dry environment. So whatever frontal boundary does pass through, it isn't going to really have an influence on anything in the way of rain. So here's a look at the long-range models. As we go into Sunday evening, this stretch of cloud cover is actually going to be another indication of a frontal boundary trying to creep down from the north. And you can see maybe a few sprinkles, if it's cold enough, maybe even some snow showers up in the North Georgia mountains, the Western Carolina mountains. Don't think that's the case. If our numbers are in the 70s, those numbers are probably somewhere in the 60s. So that's well above freezing temperature. So we will see the passage of some form of a frontal boundary, or at least try to, as we go into the nighttime hours and early morning on Monday. But then it looks like another low pressure system does try to establish itself to the northwest of us, not bringing any rain whatsoever down into our forecast Monday morning and afternoon, just looking like a mostly sunny day once again. But then that system that passes to the north of us could bring a trailing cold front into our vicinity, and it also could sprout maybe a few isolated showers as we go into Tuesday. That's actually going to be an important date because we do kick off our Stuff the Truck fundraiser as we go into Tuesday morning. I wouldn't prepare for anything out of the normal. I still think we are just going to stay the course with this consistent weather as we go into the middle portion of next week. But the GFS seems to think that we'll have some moisture available for at least a spotty shower or maybe even a brief drizzle. But it does look like we have an increase in cloud cover. That is definitely for certain as we go into Tuesday and into Wednesday. And what that would mean is just some slightly cooler high temperatures depending on how dense that cloud cover is. Let's go all the way into Thursday, and Thursday at 4 p.m. This is the widespread rainmaker that we will kind of be turning our attention to as we get into the beginning of next week. Obviously, right now, this is about a week out ahead of time, and the actual entrance it could make, if it is to go farther to the east, that would be sometime Friday into Saturday next week. So we have a lot of fine tuning to do with this forecast, but the long range models, pretty good agreement, at least at the timing of this moving through states to the west of us as we go into next Thursday afternoon. And if there is enough moisture available ahead of this frontal boundary, that could result in some widespread showers, maybe even some storms. But don't go setting that in stone whatsoever. It doesn't look like that is in the forecast as of right now. This is just something that hopefully will send us some widespread rain, hopefully alleviate some of those drought conditions, but we won't see that on the drought monitor until 2 weeks out into the future, because the drought monitor will have come out this time next week already. I imagine it might worsen before it gets better. You know that common saying, obviously sometimes things do have to get a little bit worse before they do get better. That may be the scenario with how dry we have been as of recently. So nothing really in the form of weather systems until maybe next Thursday into Friday, with a frontal boundary trying to come through, maybe a spotty shower or two if we have enough moisture in the forecast. And so let's look big scale. Do we have anything here in the northern hemisphere, in the tropics, that could possibly bring us some rain or anything? Absolutely not. The tropics have been super quiet, in fact dead quiet, since Hurricane Melissa moved up into the northern Atlantic Ocean, and we're still not forecasting any activity expected within the next 7 days. I've been telling you over and over again, hurricane season ends on November 30th. So we still have about another 20 days or so, maybe around 15 days of the Atlantic hurricane season. On record, we don't see too many named storms whatsoever during the month of November. The waters have cooled down in the Atlantic Ocean, and patterns have started to dissipate. We're not seeing lots and lots of tropical waves, say, moving off the west coast of Africa, and they just don't have as conducive of an environment to interact with like they would, say, in August, September, and early October. So I think we might be able to go ahead and write up this year's hurricane season, but we'll continue to keep an eye out, and I will continue to show this graphic on each and every stream that I do have, because of course I want you to be the first to know if there is going to be kind of a buzzer beater tropical storm out there that we may have to be concerned about. But right now, I don't have too much confidence in anything in the way of tropics impacting your forecast. Right now, I don't have a lot of confidence in anything really influencing your forecast over the next 7 days. We see that bump up about 5, 6, maybe even 7 degrees above average as we go into the weekend. And we stay the course as we go all the way through the middle portion of next week. Stuff the truck, you see Milledgeville on Tuesday and Dublin on Wednesday. Then Thursday, we will be up here in Macon, and we will be down in Warner Robins. Right now, the forecast is shaping up amazing for it, because we're used to some cold stuff to trucks. We're used to some rainy stuff to truck events that we've had in the past. If we could keep the forecast really quiet, some above average temperatures, and maybe not even that cold of a start. How about 53 degrees as you walk out the door on Wednesday? That is well below or well above average. That's getting above 10 degrees above average for your morning low temperatures. So all in all, the main messaging with your 7-day forecast, it's just a complete 180 of what we had on Monday, Tuesday, and a little bit yesterday morning. But we will hold on to the chilly evenings and the chilly mornings for the foreseeable future. 39 for a morning low on Friday once again. Only 1 degree warmer on Saturday morning at 40 degrees. And then once we get into Sunday and Monday, I think there's going to be a slight chill in the air, but compared to how we have been feeling, morning low temperatures near the 50-degree mark are going to feel drastically different. So getting a taste of that true central Georgia fall. You have your warm spells where you're still trying to hold on to that last little bit of summer, and you also have a bit of a preview of what's to come with the winter season, which we already got through. So it's smooth sailing, mostly sunny icons for almost all of your 7-day forecasts, until we do see maybe a slight increase in some cloud cover Tuesday into Wednesday. But it looks to be fairly broken cloud cover, just with the indication your high temperatures kind of remain unchanged, and we don't really see any signs of anything on the horizon. I mean, no, you may see some posts trying to nail down your Thanksgiving forecast about 2 weeks early. Yes, we've seen data that supports another polar vortex for a very cold forecast. We've seen data that supports a very warm forecast as we go into Turkey Day. So we'll continue to keep a close eye on that. But overall, like I said, you're not planning what you're eating for breakfast in 2 weeks. So we don't go trying to tell you a forecast that is 2 weeks out in advance, because it is very uncertain. That's why we show you this 7-day forecast, because past next Wednesday, we are very uncertain about what's going on. We can get an idea and we can monitor the progress of it, but we see drastic fluctuation this far out in advance. What you need to worry about is absolutely nothing for your short-term forecast. Outdoor plans, football games on Friday, the Georgia game on Saturday, maybe watching some NFL on Sunday. Going into the beginning of your work week next week, it is going to be a story of some above average high temperatures and eventually some above average morning low temperatures as we roll into Sunday. But until we get there, we're rounding out the work week with chilly mornings and above average highs. So very nice days, a very pleasant change of pace from what we had on Monday and Tuesday where it was blistering cold. But we will still probably need some form of layering as you walk outside both tomorrow morning and on Saturday morning. And then we might even have a forecast that you don't need the jacket whatsoever as you're walking out the door for church on Sunday and on Monday morning for the new work week. So that's going to do it for your extended forecast. We'll be back tomorrow with a weekend-specific forecast for everything that you do have planned. That includes pickleball. That's an updated look at your FFN and your Georgia forecast. If the Falcons are in town, I'll draft up a graphic for them because I imagine with temperatures like these, we are going to see an open roof forecast if they are playing in the bins this weekend. So thank you for tuning in. Really appreciate it. And we will see you back here at 11 a.m. sharp tomorrow.